Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. So, in your experience, what is the best way to not only create a goal, but reflect on the progress that you're making towards your current goals? So, one of my favorite things to do when I have a quiet weekend afternoon is to go for a drive with a fresh cup of coffee. So, chances are I'll have a good podcast on, just like the Truck Focus podcast, and I'll drive around. Maybe it's the city, or I'll head up to Banff, which is just in the woods behind myself, and I'll allow myself to start thinking about where things are at. So after a few sips of coffee and a few deep breaths, I notice that my mind starts to really wander and starts to think about, okay, where am I at in life? And am I accomplishing the goals that I've set out for myself and for my family? So I can honestly say, after a couple of minutes of kind of being in this place, I have a clear, I guess, vision of where I'm at. And sometimes it means, I need to give myself some tough love and say, Josh, you got to start focusing and realigning. Other times it means that I can celebrate some recent success. So I believe this process is extremely important as it helps you stay aligned with your goals. But I haven't always been this way. And to be honest, I used to just say, what are goals? They're not for me. It doesn't matter. Bad advice, former Josh. Just definitely glad I'm not in this space anymore. So that's why I'm really excited for my conversation today is I get to have Dr. Barry back on the podcast. So we dive into goals and he provides some excellent advice on not only creating goals, but what steps we can take to accomplish our goals. So I'm Josh Hannabury, your host of the Truck Focus podcast. If this is the first time you've ever checked out a podcast, I really welcome you to our community. If you're a continuous listener, a dedicated listener, I just want to continue to say thank you so much for your investment of time. I ask that you write in the comments, what is the number one goal you're working on this year? And is there any advice or any help that you would like to achieve this goal? So I've included Dr. Barry's contact details in the show notes. So that way, if you have questions, you can reach out to him directly as well. I look forward to the conversation and let's get to it. Dr. Barry, welcome back to another podcast on the Truck Focus podcast. Just really excited for our conversation today. We've had a couple conversations, obviously, when I come to your practice, and you were gracious enough to write an article on the topic, but we're really going to dive into goals and why goals are important for everyone. Goals obviously don't have a limitation on who can achieve them, who can set them up kind of for success. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that, but also some tangible takeaways. I need to do this first and I can do this. So I think you're really someone that I really admire, and I just appreciate just your story. Obviously, we've gotten to know each other quite well over the last year, and I'm grateful that you're in this space. So welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. Hey, you can't get rid of me. I keep joining you on these, and if the topic is ever cooking or something like that, I'm not your guy.
Me neither. That's funny. Yeah, no, me neither. I won't even go down there.
Yeah, no, let's not go there.
So why don't you give us just a quick recap of who is Dr. Barry?
Gosh, yeah, you bet. I'm Dr. Barry. I'm a chiropractor. Been a chiropractor for 26 years, which just seems like an eternity now, but it's gone by in the blink of an eye, of course, like everything else in life. My focus is on helping people achieve and maintain their best self in terms of their health. Obviously, that's my expertise is in maintaining the integrity of the spine, as it's the spine that houses and protects the nervous system and really allows the body to function the best it can. So that's just always been my soapbox, right? Is keep a healthy structural foundation, and then with that comes all the other things that we need to do, which is why I've really explored other avenues, like, well, what we put into our bodies, well, that's pretty important too, and what we keep out of our bodies, that's pretty important, and how we move our bodies, that's vitally important, and kind of how we get on the topic of today, which is what do we put in our heads, and what do we think about ourselves? What do we say when we look in the mirror? Things like that. So just there's so many other avenues to health and to wellness, and I'm interested in all of it, and really the vehicle of getting that out to people. I make that my mission, is to find a way that's a non-offensive way to introduce it to people, not shove it down their throat, but inspire or motivate. And I like to lead by example, and the good and the bad. And that's my life. That's my career.
It's awesome. Yeah, I like that you said that at the end, that's your life and your career, because you're living it. And it's interesting when people often think about what they're putting into their bodies, they don't really think about the mindset. They don't think about the, okay, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Who are you hanging out with? And yeah, I liked, because we talked on episode, was it 56? It was part of our We Got This mental health series. And we really did dive into like being mindful of who you're surrounded with. And it's not always adding more to your plate, but it's also removing things from your plate. And yeah, again, the fact that you can live it, but it's also your career. I think that's a really special opportunity where I think some of us are two people. There's someone at work and then they try and be someone at home and it doesn't really work out too well. And that really ties into our topic today as well, where goals. And again, I'm just really grateful that you're in this space. So can you kind of give us a rundown, your perspective, how important, first off, are goals and goal setting just for us as basic human beings?
I mean, they're absolutely crucial to having any kind of success in life. They're, whatever you want to say, they're an anchor, they're a beacon, they're something to attach yourself to that gives you a purpose for being, or gives you a why for doing what you do or having what you want to have. And goals are what steer us into the direction that we need to be in to get what we want or be who we want to be. They're absolutely vital to creating success. And when I say success, I don't mean in having $1 billion, unless that's a goal, right? But in terms of being in control of our own life, rather than letting the winds of our environment and society and the landscape around us push us into the some inevitable pit that we have no control over. So yeah, so huge.
Great. Yeah, I think it's Les Brown that speaks on like when you're on your deathbed, not to be morbid, but he's just like, you don't want to be that person that's there. And then there's all of these figures and ghosts per se that were your missed opportunities, just because, like you said, you just kind of floated and you were blown by the wind and you're like, how'd you get in that situation? I don't know. And yeah, it's interesting. And I'm reading actually a book right now called Hero on a Mission. It just came out by Donald Miller, and he kind of helps you identify there's 4 personality types. There's the victim, there's the villain, there's the hero, and then there's the guide. And it's all about intentional living, and intentionality, I think, is really important in goals, but in general, where if you're looking at yourself, and then if you're somewhat observant and you notice other people around you, it's like, do you want to be like who's around you, or do you want to drive that nicer car that you see driving down, or do you like, you watch these TV shows where they're rebuilding houses, you're like, oh, I'd love a house like that. Well, that's all the basis of goals. It's figuring out just really what matters to you. But yeah, I try and keep that perspective often, where I don't want to be even a year older today and say, oh, I missed that. And it's yeah, like I have a couple moments, obviously, like we all have moments of regret. My biggest one's actually with Avery, my son, where his biggest thing, he wanted to get up on stage with this kids pop thing prior to the pandemic. And he really wanted me to go up on stage, this whole dance thing. And I'm like, it's like a deep pit in my gut and my chest still, where I'm like, yeah, I missed that boat. Where he got up on stage, he was asked, because he was dancing on the side, and he's a really good dancer and stuff, and I'm not. And they asked me, there was a dad's competition, and I chickened out. And I felt bad because that was his goal for us when we were there. Like he talked about the whole time. And so, yeah, I think just, again, in reflection, there's always the wants, there's always the needs, but just not allowing just life to pass you by per se. And yeah, anyway.
For sure. No, for sure. And I love that intention, right? Intentionality, like purpose driven, live intentionally. You don't, for everyday loss, you never get that day back. You never get it back. So being a healthcare provider, someone comes in and they say, I've had a migraine for 2 days and I've been in bed for 2 days. I get it and I don't get it. I've never really had a migraine, but I think about, wow, you lost a day or 2 days that you just won't ever get back now. And how can I step in and help? I can't help yesterday, but I can help it hopefully in the future. But yeah, again, just and that's health related. But if it's because we don't we don't have any inspiration, motivation, reason, no goals, nothing to really drive us forward, well, we can lose many days, and we don't get those days back. So living with intention is pinnacle.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I can't, well, again, I like quoting people because then it makes me feel smart. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony Robbins, he'll define pursuit and growth and development as happiness. And when you're in a state of growth and you're in a state of this is what I want, and you're actually working towards it, the gears are turning, you're sweating, you're earning it, then that's where some happiness can come from. And we can define happiness differently and fulfillment differently. But I think, again, it comes back to the intentionality. And part of it, too, is giving yourself credit to say, yeah, I deserve that. I earned that. Because I think, again, going back to those 4 personality types I'm really in right now, how often do we fall into a victim mentality saying, oh, it's not for me? And, oh, I guess this happened to me. Or you're the opposite. You're the jealous type. You're a villain where, like, how dare that happen to them? That should be for me. And it's like, there's no joy in that. And I fight migraines not nearly as bad, thanks to you, actually, because obviously you're my chiropractor and I visit you, if not weekly, sometimes more before. And it's it's the best feeling knowing like there's a Chinook in Calgary right now and I can feel it, but I'm not on the couch with an ice pack for the entire day. And that's how I lived my life for a long time. And I felt like that, man, this is such a waste of time. But then try and get up and it's like, nope, just kidding, get back down. So it's just, yeah, I really admire the space that you're in because just your personal journey, Kathy, my wife as well. It's like, oh, thank you. Yeah. So recently you wrote an article that I was really grateful that we could share in our Truck Focus newsletter. I've included the link below to those listening. You definitely need to read it, but it was all on goals. And you talked about why, you talked about purpose, you talked about some how-tos. So can you kind of walk us through from an emotional component of goal setting? So from an emotional perspective, why do goals matter? And I guess what's the purpose of understanding why a goal matters?
Sure. And in talking about us having this conversation, man, I've read so many books. I've listened to mentors and much like yourself, I love quotes. There's not an original word that comes out of my mouth. It's been borrowed and stolen from so many other people that I admire, respect, and love. But really, I thought about this and just it's got to just come from my heart and my head, and it just it comes down to creating a why, right? Having a purpose and goals. So for me, early on, when I was kind of just blowing by the wind, but I wasn't married. I was working. I was just existing, really, but I was loving it. I was my late 20s and enjoying life, and wherever the wind took me, I would go and enjoy it and whatever. So there was nothing really, no purpose, no anchor. And then I started hearing people talk about goals. Anthony Robbins was one of them. Mark Victor Hansen, Brian Covey. These are people that talk about a purpose and a why. And I just kind of I made goals because I should make goals. And it took years, really, for me to really figure it out. Because if you're just making a goal because you're supposed to make goals, there's really nothing that's gonna get you up, right? So I learned after many years and many tries and that's my advice is, gosh, a goal has to be something that makes you giddy. It makes you. It gets you up every day and you think about it and go, yeah, I get to work on that again, either out of necessity or just really something that you're passionate about. So I don't know if that answers the question, but really there has to be a why, like what do you want? So for me, and I still get down and get bogged down with stuff of life, right? Whether it's work related or COVID related or opportunity related or kids related or whatever. And I need a reset. I need something. I take my journal, I go to a coffee shop, I get all caffeined up and I sit in the corner and I just start to write. Well, what do I want? Like what do I want right now? And sometimes it's just meaningless stuff, right? It's maybe material or it's I just want to go on a trip or go do something or whatever, right? But I start to do that. I get my brain going, my wheels going, and eventually I kind of come down to, well, why do I want these things, or what am I looking for, and what's my real purpose? And eventually something gets me giddy, right? Something gets me that really, really tickles me and says, yeah, this is going to be really good. And I will set times of the year. November is one of them. We do it as a team in our practice, in our clinic. We collectively do it in November to give us some time to really percolate over it, so that when the new year hits, we hit the ground running. But I do it personally as well. But I'll do it throughout the year whenever I feel like I just need to revisit it, or maybe change my goal. Oh my gosh, like that's one thing I learned over the years is goals can change, right? Like if you say my goal is to do this, and in a month or in 6 months, you're just like, nah, I don't really want to, I don't really want a Hummer, right? I don't really want that. So then change it, find a new one, and get back to another coffee shop with your journal and go, what really makes me tick? What, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
it's really that.
Yeah, completely agree. And you mentioned a few things there that I want to dive into. So I like when you say necessity and passion, because basic necessities of life, that's also a goal. Being able to put food on the table, pay the bills, maybe have some money in the account, progression in career, like those things are really, I think, fall in a necessity bucket. But then there's the passion bucket. And I think that's where we really have to, and I'm speaking to industry, I'm speaking to people, where we need to identify what gets you excited, what gets you to a point where you're like, yeah, I can wake up for this, instead of, oh, this again. And I think you can really identify different buckets that you want to put goals in. But I think, like, I remember my career path, just obviously being in transportation. And I remember saying to myself countless times, I'm not just a driver. I may be a professional driver today, but I am not just a driver. Like, I don't like the title just. And I think that's a goal that industry really needs to adapt, is we need to understand, and that could be any industry. I'm obviously speaking in transportation logistics, but I think people in industries, you're not just a plumber, because ultimately, look what you're doing. Well, you're providing comfort, you're providing home. So, okay, well, let's remove, I'm just a plumber, what do I know, or whatever attitudes. But I think, yeah, when I'm thinking of goals and when you're talking necessity and passion, I think that's really key, because I don't think people give themselves, like I said before, enough credit that they can actually have goals. And like, you don't want to just exist in life. You don't want to think, okay, I made this much money and this much came out of my account. Now what? I guess it's Netflix. Like, that's not really life. Like, that's, yeah, again, we could start quoting different people that start talking about stuff. But I'm glad you mentioned that. And then I like the fact that you said, if a goal is no longer fulfilling, move on. Like, I think a lot of times we get stuck to it. If we're in the space of creating a goal, it's ego. Well, I have to get it. I've told them I have to get it. It's like, no, shift, pivot. Like, and I think that's another really important really important piece that people need to understand is pivoting is healthy. And honestly, your progression is healthy. So identifying, again, your why, identifying purpose, and then identifying, is this a necessity or is this a passion, and whatever buckets you're going to start putting stuff in, but then actually being like, okay, well, I hit this milestone and it's not as exciting as I thought. So what's next, instead of staying stagnant? But there's a lot there. And I like that you went to planning too, because that's where I wanted to go next, was when we're planning our goals. And I would like the fact you talked about November. Obviously, we're recording this in February, and we just passed January, the goal month. But when you're planning in November, are you thinking technically from, I'll plan in November, we'll start it in January, and then we kind of do a 12-month cycle? Or how, when you're in the planning process, for people interested, myself included, what are some things to think about? Is it, okay, obviously there's seasons in life, there's weather seasons, there's just people, I think, feel better in spring and summer more often than winter because there's more sunlight, that kind of stuff. But are you thinking about that type of stuff when you're planning? Are you thinking about, what is it I want to achieve in 12 months? Or can you kind of walk us through that part a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the reason I'm trying to think of the author, the person, I'll remember it as soon as we finish this podcast. But there was someone that said you need 90 days for whatever it is that you've focused on, created. You need 90 days of really studying that before it becomes really part of your DNA. So that it for years it used to be October 1st. So we have October, November, December, and then by January it's just it's in there just like brushing my teeth. So that was really the purpose. So we changed it to November as a team. We just created it, and again, there's no rules, right? There's really no rules. So but that was it, right? So if you say my goal today, it just gives time to be able to really know, is this a real goal? And then 12 months, yeah, like I have well, I'd say 3-month goals, 6, 12-month, 3-year, 1 year, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, and then, which is really hard for me because I'm such a squirrel, and I do change things so much. So yeah, but lifetime goals, and that's kind of like you said before, being on your deathbed and leaving a legacy. What do I want to be remembered by? Is it the really cool skis I have in my garage? No, but is it how I made people feel? Absolutely, right. And how did I teach my kids and things like that? So yes, so timing and whatnot. I have, and I love having multiple goals and multiple time frames, and that gets into, it might seem like some logistical craziness, but again, it's not. But so in terms of, if this is the first time someone's heard that, I don't want it to be overwhelming. I want it to be simple, and that's a principle that I've learned over time. Simplicity is a value for me. It has to be, or I just, I lose interest, I get confused, and I abandon. So in keeping with simplicity, find a timeline, whatever that goal is. It's, and that's the tricky thing, right? January, right? What are everyone's goals? To lose weight, to get in shape. And then in February, the gyms are empty. So there has to be again a why and a purpose. And if it's a big enough why, and the purpose is strong enough, then you're in the gym in July. So and if not, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to revisit it. And I don't know if we'll get to this in a minute, but a goal that's not written is a wish. And as they say, wishes rarely come true, right? So you got to write it down. You have to put it up. So my bathroom mirror, I have it in my car, I have it at work, and anywhere I'm going to spend any amount of time, I have my goals, my top 5, my personal goals and my professional goals. And so those are some of the hows and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I wanted to go there next too, as more on the action step side of it. But you mentioned, again, some really good concepts where, like Kathy and I, my wife, we often talk, if it's easy, it's worth it. If we just feel like we're hitting our head against the wall, you need to really take a step back and be like, are you going about it the right way? Maybe the intention's there, maybe the overarching goal, yes, it's worth it. 4 years of university, 6 or 8 years of university, it's tough.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if you're not getting into a groove or you hate what you're studying, pay attention to the signs. But it could be small goals. It could be how you dress. It could be, okay, you know what? I'm going to eliminate pot from my diet. Perfect. Like, so again, I agree with when you said, if this is the first time someone's listening about it, we don't want it to be overwhelming. So keeping that in mind, simplicity. And I really like that. Like, guess, keep it simple, stupid. I think that's a really, like I say that to myself. I don't identify as stupid, but I think that's a really good slogan when you're super frustrated. This isn't working. Well, are you keeping it simple? Probably not. And probably I think not. Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think that also sheds some of the, when people can feel overwhelmed. I've never done this before. Good. Like, allow that fear. Like, I think it was Bruce Springsteen used to say, like, when he'd have stage fright, he's like, the day I stopped having stage fright is the day I stopped going on stage. He's just like, because I want to be excited to be in this environment, and my fans and those coming they've earned the right for me to be excited and to give my best. And if I'm just like, meh. So if you feel nervous for a goal, just shift in your mind. And I try and do this too. Like, before I go speak, there's a few people here. It's like, no, that's excitement. Like, stage fright's a good thing, but you shift how you identify with it. It's like, yeah, okay, nerves can be paralyzing, but excitement gets you up there. And yes, I'm
Mhm.
sweating because I'm jacked. So you can do that with the most basic goals, obviously. And I really live in that space too, where we have like, okay, what do I want to accomplish this week, month, year, like that kind of process. And are you familiar with Tim Ferriss, the 4 Hour Work Week?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate with that too. When he says, he's like, so 365 days doesn't seem like very much time, or it can seem like a very long time. But when you think about how much you can get done, so if you were to do 3 or 4 tangible things every single day for that long, that's like 1,500 or whatever that number is, items that you've accomplished in that year, which could be more than some people do in a lifetime. So
Mhm.
keeping it simple, bite-sized chunks. It's going to be, I'm going to write 10 words today, so I'm going to become a writer. Okay. Or
Yeah.
there's those little things too, which I think is really important. So the transition though into, yeah, action items. So writing it down. I love when Denzel Washington, he gave that speech on like a dream is just a dream. And like you said, they often come true, or they don't often come true. Write it down. And then once you've written it down, you got to create a plan of attack. So basically a roadmap. Okay, this is what you want. How are you going to get there? So can you walk us through a little bit of that process as well?
Yeah, for sure. So, gosh, again, without getting overwhelming, it starts with that really that why, that purpose, and and then writing down that goal. Um, the one thing I wanted to touch on with what you were just talking about. So I use the example of of say losing weight. Um, that could get really frustrating really fast, and and then you wake up, you look at your goal and go, oh, I need to lose 20 pounds. And that was, 30 pounds ago type of thing. And so that's just going to get stressful. So then when you look at that goal, you get negative feelings and vibes. Well, that's not giddy. I said, rule one, sit down and write something out that makes you feel giddy. And so changing it or reframing it and saying, you know what, I'm going to visit a one of the hikes in our national parks that are in our own backyard here, twice a month. And I'm going to, commit to, you know, 10K hike, say 7K hike, 5K hike, whatever it is. And right. So what's going to be the end result in 6 months of going on 12 hikes? And in the most beautiful part of the world, right? Are you going to lose weight? You probably will. And in order to do those hikes, you're going to probably, if it's 2 a month, you're probably going to have to do something more local. You're probably going to have to, maybe get on the treadmill, join a gym, or do something, watch what you're eating. You're certainly going to need to pack some food and go to bed earlier the day before a hike, right? So there's so many little things that come into, like, you want to lose weight, but you want but the goal has to be fun. Like, how much fun does that sound, right? Oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. Like, you want to be there, but think in terms of, as the planning goes, really the real benefit to all of this, like, what if you never lose 20 pounds? And yet in 2 years, you've gone on 48 hikes and you've seen every beautiful trail there is in the Kananaskis. And you've got some neat gear, you've met some great people, right? Like, is that a win or what?
Yes.
And really then, so that's why I say goals can change, or you can change what they say or what they look like. So, but when it comes down to the planning, I think it's so important to say, well, what do I really want? And also alluding to what you were saying earlier, is it really your goal? Or is it someone else's goal? Well, everybody should look like this on this magazine. Well, no one does, not even the person on that magazine, right? So what do you really want? And my goodness, I've been guilty of that again back in my earlier days when it was just me and my friends had these nice cars. And I was like, well, I need a nice car too. So I went and leveraged myself to get a nice car. And it took another friend of mine to kind of wake me up. And really, that wasn't my goal. I could care less about the fancy car. And I had a 3-mile commute. So I didn't really use the car. And my other friends that had it, a couple of them were such car nerds that they loved their cars and they're out there washing, right? So my goal was their goal, and it actually didn't do anything for me. So, but it did teach me a lesson, like everything does, right? How many times have I been taught lessons, right? So,
Yeah.
but again, and it comes back to being intentional, learning from it, and going, oh, that's not my goal. So, well, then if that's not, then what is? And then back to your initial question, the planning, as the more crystal clear we are on that goal, then the planning, I think, starts to become self-evident. And then we get to figure out, well, what's it going to take to get there. And if it's and so planning, you need a time frame. When do I want this goal by? Right. So if you just say, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to be out of debt, or whatever it is, then okay, well, when? And so create an end, a date, and then create some. And again, the goal has to make you giddy, but the steps have to make you giddy too. You have to want to, look at your account every Friday or every Sunday morning or whatever over a cup of coffee and go, okay, can I chip away at this debt? Oh, I just did. Look at that. It's $100 less. I only now owe $1 million or whatever, right? But you just chip away at it and, oh, that makes me feel good. Oh, then you're still on the path for that goal. And it affects other things, right? I want to buy that. I'm not going to get that. Or I want to eat that. I'm still trying to, I've got that hike coming up. I love cheesecake, but I'm really stoked about this hike coming up, right? Like it's bumpers, right? They all have to get you back on. And then if you cave in and you eat the cheesecake or you buy that sweet pair of shoes or whatever, okay, but you're going to have to revisit that purpose, the why, what's that goal? The more you look at it, the more you keep it positive, the more it keeps you giddy, the easier it is to get back on course.
Completely agree. Yeah. And I think the hiking analogy can be used in so many walks of life where it's not necessarily just the weight. It's the, okay, what can I do to actually enjoy this process? But then in reflection, look who you met, or look what the gear you have, or what were you listening to on your commutes, like your mental health. And I think, yeah, that can be applied in so many different ways. Once you actually identify, this is what I want, and I want to have it by this time period. Obviously, you have to make sure it's realistic. $1 million might take a little longer to pay off $100 at a time, but ultimately it's just like, okay, and keeping it simple, but keeping it fun. And I think that's really, really important when we're talking planning, because then you're actually going to follow through. And I was going to talk about accountability as well, where it's like, it's great to have a plan, but if it's just a plan that just sits there for the next 2 years, not really a plan at that point. So I think, yeah, what you said though, where you're really enabling yourself to feel good about it. You're getting dopamine hits every time you hit, yes, I will actually transfer that money onto that credit card. Yes, I'm actually going to do this instead of that. I think, yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot of takeaways too. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's nice to have a great conversation, but when you actually can relate to the conversation and say, yeah, okay, I can do that. Like it, honestly, creating a goal is not as hard as I think some people make it out to be, because they've never allowed themselves to just dream. And my perfect spot, like we have too many kilometers on our vehicle because of it, is I'll just go for a drive. And I like coffee, so I'll definitely have a coffee too. And I'll listen to something where maybe it's just the sound of the music, not actual lyrics, or it's a podcast where they're talking about the topic I'm interested in. And you just let your subconscious, you can feel like in your head, just the gears turning, and you're still paying attention while you're driving, but you're almost daydreaming. And you're like, okay, that's what life could be like if and okay, that I can tell that goal really mattered to me in that moment. So, but yeah, I really appreciate just that whole walkthrough, because again, people can overcomplicate it. And I was in a conversation yesterday where we were talking about like telematics in trucks. And he did a really nice job explaining in a very simple language the value of telematics in a truck instead of a technical guide. And I think a lot of times the goals, people go way too technical, way too difficult because they want to sound smart. And it's like, no, it's not even about that. Like there's a time and place, and this is not it. So I like the fact everything you said is really something that people can apply and they can feel comfortable applying. It's not and that's something I really admire about you. Like honestly, the moment I met your team and yourself, I'm like, wow, I'm like part of the conversation. I'm not just there listening to the conversation. And I think that's a really valuable skill set in your profession, but something I'm trying to get better at too is just when I'm in an environment, there's other people around, they feel part of it. They're not just, I think that's a big goal of mine actually, is that part of it. So again, I just really appreciate what you shared. It's really, I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Cool. I say, because I was thinking about what we're going to talk about, and I wanted to come from example, right? I want to be cool. So here's where I've fallen. I kind of shared a bit about that. I was just making goals because I was told to make goals, and then they were, I don't think any goal's stupid, but there was no anchor, there's no why, right? But I learned from it, right? I always learn from it. But in the past, some of the biggest goals for me, one of them was my goal was to, and I reframed it, but not be late. Like I used to be a late guy, and I still am in some situations, and that's not a good trait. Nobody likes that. I became unreliable. If I want to be an example for people, that's not a great example to set, right? And I've got kids and things like that. So that was a goal of mine. So with the action steps came, it wasn't just, well, don't be late, right? But it was set a time, 10 minutes or half an hour before, depending on where it is and what I'm doing, to be somewhere. Things like, be the first person there, not late, right? Or okay, so get my clothes out the night before that I'm going to wear to work, have my lunch prepared, have my breakfast prepared, right? So these things, and there's so many positives that come from that. And that's really, again, when I talk about the giddy part, when you really set a goal now, and my why, it was a personal why, but it came from feedback from other people. And it was embarrassing, and I'm fine telling the world about it. I really am. And listen, it's the way I was, and a part of me still is. So I think the accountability part of it is you just have to tell the world and say, hey, here's my goal, but here's why, right? And people that have had issues with substance abuse, and they got good friends that have, and those that talk about it, like do you have less respect for them? Never. I have way more respect. And do I want to help? Oh, 100%, right? So there's so many positives that come from this, and it all comes from intentional living, one of the first things you said today, and then creating a why, and then goals around it, and then action steps that are in alignment with that goal. On a less serious note, one of my goals for a number of years now, but it's now a hard set goal for me, is to be able to do a handstand, a 30-second handstand. And I'm good like 5 seconds. It feels like I'm up there for 30 seconds or a minute, right? And I'm down there, I'm like, woo, big smile on my face, and I can't see, but it's just a goal, right? I've just always wanted to, and I'm over 50. So along the lines of that, it's just something that makes me giddy. It's a goofy goal, but and I'm working towards it. I have a trainer that I work with. He's like, I'm on board, but here's what you need. You need shoulder strength. You need core strength. You need practice, repetition, right? So there's a lot of steps that go into being able to do this. Another goal of mine is, and I'm going to wait till the spring, but it's to do a wheelie on my bike. I kind of have done them over the years, but I've been a cyclist forever. And now every kid on every block is doing these wheelies, and I don't want to miss out. So I'm going to learn how, and I don't know, I'm going to wear my hockey gear or something because I'm going off the back. But right, it makes me giddy, and it makes me, every time I hop on my bike, I want to just try a little bit, and there's tutorials on how to do it, right? So it just makes it fun, right? And you chip away at these things every day. I look at it, and I still kind of smile, right? So here's my goal for my business. Here's my goal for my savings. Here's my goal for my fitness. Oh yeah, and there's that little fun goal in there that I want to do a 30-second handstand, right? Yeah. And it literally is just as important as the other, because it makes me giddy, and it makes me want to work towards it.
Yeah, and I think it's nice too because it keeps goals, the topic, regardless of the outcome, keeps it front of mind. And I think that's really cool too, where I think people, myself included, you can forget. You can forget
Mhm.
there's more to life than work. There's more to, like, you have to have a healthy balance in different aspects. So that's nice
Yeah,
to hear where, yeah, it's just like, I want to learn how to do it. So I'm gonna go. And it's like, yeah, we need more and more of that type of
yeah,
confidence too, because yeah, life needs to be fun. And that's my biggest blessing, honestly, with my kids. Like, I played dinosaurs for collectively this week, probably 6 hours, and I don't even know how to play. Like, I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, to me, I'm telling myself it's not weird. This is fun. Like, I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how to make that sound yet. But my little guy, he's 3, and he'll just go off, and he gets so hyper when I'm there, and I'm just like, okay, this is like, so just, yeah, identifying what's my why, what's the purpose.
yeah.
And sometimes the goal obviously is for other people, but yeah, I really like that and I respect that. So I appreciate you sharing. That's awesome.
Well, and again, perspective, right? So those 6 hours that you played dinosaur, you know, those 6 hours you could have put into 3 more podcasts. You could have, made money. You could have been to the gym. You could have had better sleeps, right? There's a number of things. None of those pale in comparison to the 6 quality hours you gave your son and the impression that you made. Yeah, I watched the first Iron Man with my youngest last night. Just the two of us sat on the couch, ate dinner, watched Iron Man, and yeah, there were other things that I could have done. I could have been out with other friends or with my partner, and I just said, no. You know what? Me and my guy, we're just going to watch it, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything in the world. And I know for a fact you were the same way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's intentional. And I think it brings back to the intentionality of just what is it that you want? Who are you impacting? And to me, I think that's really cool because that to him is a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
And that was a pivotal impact in his life where that just, I think that's really special. So glad you shared. So, but yeah, honestly, I like the clarity of our conversations, and I know that's the feedback that I received too when you joined. So I do really appreciate your time, be honest, your honesty, your humility, and yeah, I like that we can get really excited about a topic that sometimes can be boring or too technical. So, but I really do appreciate you hopping on. Just yeah, as we do come to a close, were there any final thoughts you'd like to share? But also, how can people learn a little bit more about you? Maybe they have questions, they want to get in contact with you. What can people do to do that?
Sure. I mean, the first part of that is, like, uh, what the heck are a trucker and a chiropractor doing telling me how to set goals, right? And I love that because they're real people, right? Like, really, if it's Tony Robbins and Mark Victor Hansen talking about it, well, yeah, but this is real, and it comes from experience and repetition and failure and dusting ourselves off and getting back in it, and real life in the trenches, living and breathing it. And I think that there's value in that, and I always want to bring value. I'll never claim to be an expert in something I'm not, but if I've been there and done that, I'll always share my experiences and what I've learned, and yeah. So that's a big one for me. Authenticity is huge, and I know it is with you as well. Yeah, I mean, getting hold of me, I'm a chiropractor in the southeast corner of Calgary in Chaparral Family Chiropractic. Um, there's two of us there. We got a great team. That to get a hold of me for anything that you're related to what I do, that's easy. Chaparral Chiropractic, but for anything else life related and whatnot, my email you're looking for, or is that what you
Whatever
want?
yeah, I can include it in the show notes too, but whatever you're
Sure.
comfortable. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Like anything health related or anything this related, I'm happy to throw my 2 cents worth. And I did say earlier, full disclosure, there's nothing original that comes out of my mouth other than my personal spin on what I've read, heard, seen, and been told. I can bring a ton of experience, and it's funny how the years do that. I don't say I'm old, but I do now understand old people, say, oh, back in the day, or here's what I've learned. And it's like, oh yeah, well, me too. I'm there now. Yeah. Living
Yeah.
in
It's awesome. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you joining. And again, I like the word authentic. And I like that we live in that space and we try and improve in that space, because that's my ultimate goal, even with this platform, is to show that no one needs to be perfect to create an impact, but you can definitely make that choice to say, no, I'm going to be me and I'm going to do the right thing, and doing the right thing may not be the most popular vote, may not be the best decision for others sometimes, where I want you to lie about this or whatever. But I think this conversation really talks about, again, intentionality, authenticity. There's purpose behind a goal. And if it's career orientated, if it's industry orientated, if it's just your personal well-being, there's so much value there. And I think everything you shared today, there's so many takeaways, which I always really appreciate. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And the one closing thought I'd say is, if you're new to goals, if you're not sure, if you're like, oh, goals are weird, start with a personal goal. Like, start with something that just like I think, like I said, they all have to make you giddy, but how giddy do you get when you're thinking about how much debt you have, right? Or how much work you need to do in the basement. Like, that's just not right. Like rather think about, something that you've really wanted to do that you never thought you could do. Something that you wanted that you never thought you'd have. And then just put that as a goal, and the more detailed you can be, the better. And that's what's great about it, right? I want a really nice watch. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? If it's a $40,000 Rolex, well, then say that, right? There's something called a dream board that I was introduced to years and years ago. And what's so cool about this dream board is that you get whatever magazine clipping, whatever, if it's a watch you want, or a car that you want, or whatever, right? Or vacation, like a place you want to go for vacation. You have these things on that dream board, so you're actually looking at the dream board. And again, what I found over time was certain things just didn't matter anymore. Hey, I don't want a Rolex. That's stupid. I'd rather go on that vacation that's right next to the picture of the, right? So boom, I could go on 3 vacations for that. So you know what I mean? Like things. So then with that, you pick and choose. But if you're new to it, I think that's where I'd start. Go to the coffee shop with a journal. What do I really want? What do I want? What gets me going? And you start becoming a better version of yourself. You start to get some laser focus. Then you dream board, and then your energy is higher. Your people notice it, and you become a better influence. You become a better person. It all just snowballs. And it's a really, really fun thing to go through. And it's really fun to watch in other people.
Yeah, it's the best when someone's like, you're different. And you're like, thanks. Because ultimately you are different. And it's just, I like the term laser focus, because I think too often, especially in our realm, like we live in a very distraction fulfilling world where instant. Oh my, but when you're laser focused on what is it that you want, not what your parents told you wanted, or a friend told you wanted, or someone else told you wanted, it's no, what do I want? And when you can actually have some clarity on that, and then you just, no, good, get out of here, distractions, because you're laser focused. Yeah, I agree. I like that term a lot. I'm glad you said that.
Good.
Fun. Awesome. Well, yeah, honestly, thank you again. And I'll always welcome you back. There's a lot more topics that we need to discuss, but I do really appreciate, again, the honesty, the humility, and just the great leadership that you continue to offer. I know countless people, myself included, and I'm glad that we could have this conversation today. It was awesome.
Great. Yeah, happy to do it. Stay tuned, everybody. We're going to make a souffle next time.
Yeah, it sounds good. Have a good rest of your day. Bye,
Thanks
Dr.
so much,
Barry.
Josh. See ya. Bye.
See ya. Dr. Barry, I just wanted to continue to say thank you so much just for the value that you shared today with the honesty and humility. Just really appreciate it. It's so nice having a clear understanding of why goals are important, as well as the just action steps that you shared in our conversation. I really believe it's going to help a lot of people, myself included, and I just thank you so much again. So after listening to today's episode, I encourage you to share in the comments what's the number one goal that you're working on, and what's some advice that Dr. Barry shared that's going to help you accomplish accomplish this goal. I've also included Dr. Barry's contact details in the show notes. So if you have any questions specific to goals, health, mental health, all that great stuff, make sure that you contact him. I've also included the link to Dr. Barry's most recent article in the Truck Focus newsletter, Goals. Make sure you check it out. And before you leave, I do ask you to like this episode, share it out. There's a lot of really good information that was shared today, but also subscribe to the channel that you're listening on, because as I like to say, the greater the following, the greater the impact, and you'll be notified of when we release new content. So Dr. Barry, thank you so much again for hopping on the podcast. Honestly, just continue to value just your mentorship in my own life, as well as into our industry. It's just awesome. As always, let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.